All right. Welcome back, everyone, to Entrepreneur Encounters. I'm super excited to have you here, and I'm really super thrilled to have Sharon with us from Forti Goods. She's going to tell you a great story about where she started and how she got there, and is launching some amazing products right now. So, before I begin, I want to tell you a little bit about Entrepreneur Encounters. Our goal is to help everyone be able to tell their story and build their dream. We're working to empower entrepreneurs to be able to find the money, mindset, and means to unleash your business. So if that's something you're interested in, we believe you've got to encounter and meet other entrepreneurs who are going on the journey with you. You're not struggling with chronic uniqueness. There are others who are out there that walk this journey. So thank you for tuning in. And by listening today, I think you're going to pick up a few tips that you're definitely going to apply to your life. I have certainly been thrilled. The first time I was able to meet Sharon and she came into the office, it was just a real thrill to be able to get with her. So without further ado, I'm going to invite Sharon on here. How you doing, Sharon?
I'm doing well. Thanks, Brent.
Awesome. Just tell me about you. Tell us about your business.
Sure. So, I started off as an interior designer, and I didn't really have a very linear path, throughout my career. So I went to school for interior design. I was an entrepreneur pretty much right out of college, after graduation, and I had an interior design business. I did that for a number of years. And then I made a move to a big corporation. I went and worked for Kohl's. I started off in their interior design department, and then I moved into product design. So I designed furniture for sale in the stores, and went basically overseas for a number of years to work with factories and developing furniture. And from there, I learned another skill set, and I just decided I saw some things that really kind of environmentally and socially didn't really sit right with me. So I left that job to basically start my own thing. And that's when we met.
Why the shift to entrepreneurship? I know I've heard your story more. We had more time to go into detail
Yeah.
about kind of that eye-opening moment. I don't know if you want to share about that, but I think what is the move that said, look, because some people would say, I saw that, and so I went to go work for another company. You said, I saw that, and I need to go do it myself. Tell me about that.
Yeah. I mean, it's really just kind of, consumption, capitalism, things that are really not super popular to talk about in business circles. And I just wanted to do something that was a little bit more conscious. And I knew based on what I saw, I mean, Kohl's is a really great employer. They treat their employees well, and they're trying to do good things in their supply chain and manufacturing. But ultimately, the way it's set up, when you're producing in another country, you still have to get it over an ocean to get it within, to get it here to our country. And there's a lot of kind of shady things in the shipping industry, a lot of environmental issues in the shipping industry. And I wanted to be able to have more, I guess, control over the process. And one of the things that I learned while I was an interior designer is that when you're trying to build a sustainable building or a sustainable project, highly suggested and recommended that you're sourcing from the region or the continent where the project is located, so that you don't have, the ocean freight, you don't have the trucking or rail, on top of that, and all of the carbon that goes along with that. So I knew that just going to a different retailer was not going to solve the problem. I knew that, having more control over how something was built, and frankly, building a more expensive product. I'm of the mindset that we should be buying fewer, better things, things that are made to last, things that can be repaired, just durable goods that are going to last a long time. And that's not something that's, super popular in business. It's all about consumption. And but I think there's a growing movement towards people who are, who care about the planet, who care about the people who are making their products, and are starting to demand better.
Sure, you're trying to put the durable back in the durable goods category. I respect that.
Mhm.
Walk us through your journey, how you got into business. Start from that spot where you were like, I think I can do better, differently, in a different way.
Yeah. So, I did have one stop before I started between Kohl's and where I started my company. And at that time, when I left Kohl's, I didn't think that I would ever be an entrepreneur again. In fact, I kind of didn't want to be. I wanted to be an employee. I had been an entrepreneur before, worked for myself in a service-based business, and it's a lot of work. It's everybody thinks that it's like, oh, quit your 9 to 5 and work for yourself. You'll never work a day in your life. But in actuality, you're working, I think you said it once, you're working 12 hours a day, just, pick which 12. Um, and it is a hustle. And when you pay yourself, you pretty much know where every dollar came from. Whereas when you're working for somebody, you don't necessarily have the same worries, when you go to bed at night, when you wake up in the morning. And I was at a point in my life where I just didn't think I wanted that stress. But, I was working someplace that I thought was going to be, have a really high level of sustainability. And, I basically was kind of under the mistaken thought that just because something is made here, it's going to be made better, more sustainably. There's going to be better benefits to the people who are making the product. And, I just really realized that if I wanted to build the line that, I felt good about, that I felt good of putting my name behind, that I was just going to have to do it myself. And so I quit my job, and I kind of rearranged some things with finances so that I would be able to, handle not having a salary. And I met you, and I started talking with, other people, business advisors, and just trying to figure out what my best course forward would be, um, to success. So,
So I know that you mentioned a little bit about some of those choices you made. What type of roadmap, what type of like time frame did you give yourself when you said, I'm going to quit my job, I'm going to start this? Did you give yourself a time frame? Did you set yourself a budget? Because that's a scary move, and particularly in
yes.
your line, you couldn't really you couldn't make this a side hustle. It either had to be all in or not. So give us a few details on like what were some of the choices you had to make in order to
Sure.
work it out.
So once I had find like, I probably took a couple of months just to sort of assess where I was at, and whether I wanted to try and stay where I was, or find a different job, or, I wasn't really thinking necessarily about entrepreneurship. But once I kind of like, I had this idea for the furniture line. And, once I had that idea, since it was a business that was kind of comparable to where I was working, I just didn't feel ethically right about side hustling something that was a similar business. So the moment that I kind of had that aha moment about this is what I want to do, I immediately contacted my attorney. I contacted I contacted a financial planner and talked with my husband about, during this whole time. And I would say, the moment from the time that I made that decision in my mind, I I I submitted my letter of resignation within a matter of days. And I wouldn't say that that's like recommended. Um, and a lot of people were like, once I told people what I did, they were like, that's crazy. Why would you do that? Why would you get rid of you have a family responsibility. Why would you do that? And a lot of people would point to me and be like, that's crazy. Don't do what she did. But I just felt that, where there's a will, there's a way. And, I know what it takes this isn't my first business. This is my second, although it's my first product-based business. And I knew it would cost a lot more money, but I knew enough about developing product, about entrepreneurship, and I knew I had a strong enough, support system around me that I had a pretty good chance of being successful. So it was just a matter of, okay, we're going to move quick and we're going to shift some things around financially, and it's just full steam ahead. And the other thing too is I feel, for me personally, when you're passionate about something, for me, that drive becomes almost endless. So, in the beginning, it was just pedal to the metal.
Well, passion meets hustle, and that's a key part of entrepreneurship. And so you mentioned a couple things that you believed in yourself, you had passion that you just mentioned, and you had a support system. Tell us what your support system looked like, and importantly, how were you able to interact with that support system to be able to keep moving your business forward?
Sure. So, you were definitely a strong supporter of my business in the beginning. I spent a lot of time talking through both of my ideas for, I guess I should back up a little bit. So I had two ideas that I was starting off with. The business that I have right now is US made sustainable furniture that has a locking component in it, app enabled, and it's primarily geared towards parents who want to lock things up, specifically cannabis. And and that's to combat, accidental consumption in legal states. So I didn't think that that business was going to get any sort of traction in Wisconsin where cannabis is prohibited. Um, and so I was going to rely on my interior design background and all of my connections there to develop a furniture line that was, made to order for, it was a B2B business. It was for interior designers and architects. And the goal was to make sustainable US made furniture to service the independent hotel and senior living markets. And I thought I would have a lot easier time finding investment in that type of company because both of those were at the time that I was, looking for investment. Both of those were growth industries. Um, so, you know, basically, I was looking for help and support in developing my business plan so that I could get investment. And I was also looking for just you know, general advice from other people who were in those markets. So you were one of my advisors. Um, Julie Kaufman was one of my advisors, and Brigitte Reitenbach from B and Company or B and Co. Um, she was one of my advisors, and then Cheryl Mitchell at the SVDC was one of my advisors. And those, the four of you were really instrumental in helping me kind of nail down my financials, review it for, Julie's raised a ton of money non-traditionally. And so she was really helpful in trying to get me out, to investors and talking to people and helping me to understand like what this really entailed. Brigitte did a great job. She got me, she threw my hat in the ring for a pitch competition in New York that was geared towards independent hotels. And that was amazing. I made a lot of connections there. So it was, people want to help. They're not going to do things for you, but if I come to you with my business plan and some questions, and use people as a sounding board, you get a lot of good advice and a lot of good food for thought and things that, whatever's rattling around up here you haven't necessarily looked at it from all sides. So I found that super helpful.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you to go maybe even a little bit deeper. Obviously, my job as an entrepreneur coach, it's easier to come to me and say, Brent, can you help me understand this? Because that's my job.
Yeah.
But as you go to other folks in your network that you mentioned, how do you make that ask? Because I get a lot of entrepreneurs who say, I don't even know how to ask someone. Like it feels awkward. Like we used to just be friends and now are acquaintances, and now I want to like have them help me figure out my business. How do you start that conversation?
Yeah, I didn't know you before I met you. So it was very, or before, I had this business idea. So it was I don't want to say it was a transaction, but it was like I was coming to you specifically for that. So you knew that. Julie's a good example because she and I have been, professional acquaintances and friends for, or we've worked together professionally on some projects, and we've been friends for God, since I was in college. So almost probably like close to 20 years now. So, you know, with her, it was, I didn't really have a problem asking because I knew that she would be like, yeah, I'll help you. Um, there have been a couple of people beyond, the initial core four people that I was speaking with regularly. There's someone who owns a really large furniture business for really big hotels in Milwaukee. Or I should say, they have a business that's really big, but they're, international in terms of all the projects that they have. And, someone suggested that I reach out to that person and made an initial connection. And I met with him. And, at first it was a little, I kind of pitched to him like what I was planning on doing and asked some questions of him. And he was super generous of his time. Um, I think it's just reaching out to someone with a specific couple of things that you're looking for. Like when I reached out to him, I had some questions about scaling my business and about, US manufacturing and about, because they do both US and overseas manufacturing. So I was asking him about that. And I was asking him specifically because in the beginning, I was really looking to open my own small shop. And so I had a lot of questions specific to that. And he was great. I mean, he even offered, he's like, when you're ready for your shop, let me know. And we've got some old equipment that I could, hand you down. He actually even came with me to tour one of the facilities that I was thinking about using for a space. And looked at all the equipment and kind of kicked the tires. So I think people really want to help. It's just a matter of coming to people with very specific asks and questions and ways that you can see them help you get further, as opposed to just kind of going to somebody and saying, hey, can I pick your brain? I hate that.
I think that's one of those phrases that's going to have to be tossed out. Leave that back
Yes.
in 2020. No more brain picking.
No.
I really like what you said with that specific ask. It's both less daunting and it's not like, hey, help me with my business. It's one area, and it sounds like ultimately through the conversation you got what was ultimately unsolicited additional support.
Yes.
And that's something I want everyone to really latch onto. There are some folks who are going to say no, and that's actually okay. Get to know quickly so you can go with the ones who are either able or willing to support you. But gosh, you don't know what happens until you have that conversation. So I can't like echo that enough. What Sharon said, go out, have the conversation, just be willing. I think it's courage. Would you say it was like just took courage to get out there and get it done?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not a very outgoing person. Once I get to know someone, I can be, lively and outgoing. But, initially I was very much like, why are these people, these people aren't going to want to talk to me. They're not going to want to help me. They're busy running their own companies. And, I had enough friends who were kind of just kind of kicking me and saying, no, just ask. What's the worst they say is no. And I never wanted to be like, a burden or, ask of somebody something that they didn't want to give. But, you just have to realize that if people don't want to do something, they'll just say no. Or you'll learn very quickly that they're just not interested and you can move on.
Yeah, and I think what you just shared about that feeling and not wanting to be a burden, not wanting to, you know, put people in a position where they have to say no. All we do is take the words out of their mouth, and then no becomes the default answer because you never asked. So, thanks for sharing that, because I guarantee lots of entrepreneurs are in the exact same spot. So you mentioned you had two possible product lines. You have a locking furniture line. You have the boutique hotel. This was pre-COVID, by the way, so we didn't know the hotels were not going to be the sweet spot for at least a year. Walk us through, like, how did you pick? And you were looking for funding too, so you've got all this stuff going on in the mix.
Yeah. I still remember sitting in your office and with the green marker and the orange marker kind of doing an analysis of which lane I should kind of pick. And it's funny, but I always thought that, and intuitively you would think, okay, it would be a much easier company to build initially to go B2B because, you find one interior designer, one architecture firm, or, you find one customer, but they have multiple projects. So you hopefully get specified on a lot of different things, and, you can sort of grow that way. So your customer acquisition is different. With the consumer-based business, you got to get through the noise of everything to like find your customer and find your audience. And, if I'm being honest, we just launched in October, and we have had, a number of unforeseen, uh, let's just say bumps in the road that, yeah, they were just unforeseen. And, yeah, it's just, you never really know where things are going to land, but we just thought that it would be harder to scale a business where we're, having to find our product market fit, um, and find our customers. So I just really didn't think cannabis association, finding all these customers and getting through the noise of social media, um, it just seemed like it was going to be a harder business to build. I really wanted to do it, but I just thought, okay, I'm going to start with this B2B business, and then I'm going to layer in this other furniture line, this idea that I think could do really well. So it was really an idea for two businesses that I was trying to Frankenstein together. And, I kept hearing from people over and over again, you included, pick one lane and go with that. And I was just so afraid, I think, to do the consumer-based business, that I really fought that advice for months. And then, it just ended up being that I found, one investor, who was actually really excited about the idea. Not a cannabis user himself, but very excited about the idea. So when I did finally find investment, I was just so much more excited about the product that I was going to be able to build and bring to market than I was about the other business. And once COVID hit, I felt like I kind of dodged a bullet, because there would have been nothing for, I would have been building something that nobody would have, I mean, all of that work just kind of dried up.
So you landed an investor, which congratulations, by the way. That's a huge move. And I think you mentioned, you told me privately, you've been able to build off that and continue to grow from there. Walk us through the process of how you went doing the raise, because I know you and I we looked at some of your budget, we looked at the concepts a little bit, but that process for a lot of folks is daunting to say, wait a second, she was doing some pitch competitions and then all of a sudden found an investor. It sounds like that was a one-day process, and we know that's not it. So can you tell us a little
No.
more about getting
Uh,
money?
so when I left my last job, that was in August of 2018. So I left on like a Tuesday. I filed the paperwork for my business on a Thursday. And, from there, I spent the remainder of 2018 building out my business plan and building my budget, and, getting assistance from you and some other advisors on, how much money I needed. At the time, I was looking to open a facility, so it included a lot of equipment as well, and, salaries for people working in the facility. And, um, then I spent pretty much all of 2019 trying to find money. So at first, I started with, um, Fund Milwaukee, and I pitched there. And, well, actually, let me back up. So when I first thought that I was going to do this, I was like really, hoping to find a bunch of female investors. So I was like, yeah, I'm gonna fund this business using a lot of, female investors. It's going to be this great, female manufacturing kind of a women's empowerment story. And then I realized, it was really hard to find women investors, and they were typically very specific, um, well-known markets. They were looking for a certain kind of return. And I realized that, around the time that I was born in the 70s, women got the ability to actually own their own bank accounts. Like before that, it was either a husband or, some other male that would have to sign over and allow women to have their own bank account or their own credit card. So women just haven't been, um, able to amass as much wealth over time. And I thought that was kind of an interesting thing that, that was sort of the first, um, you know, curtain that was sort of pulled away. And then I thought, oh, I'll go to like a community based model. And so I pitched at Fund Milwaukee and it went really well. It was scary for me because, like I said, I'm not an extrovert. I'm very much don't want to be on stage, don't want to be in the limelight at all. And so that was kind of a hard thing to get through. And then I realized that the amount of money that I was looking for and the type of business that I was looking for was too um, complicated for community investment. Community investment is great for something like, a bike shop or um, you know, a restaurant that's looking to add something to their, like a local business that's looking, but the scale of what I was trying to do and the fact that it was B2B and that customers like these community investors couldn't like walk in and like, hey, I invested in this place. Like they wouldn't really have any ownership of it. It just felt like that was not the right fit. So then I started doing pitch competitions, but because I have a community like aspect to it and a social component to what I'm doing, and I'm not looking to build this business to like hockey stick scale it up and then sell it for millions of dollars. Um, because I wanted to build it and hold it for a while, it just didn't appeal to traditional investors. So I was doing these pitch competitions, but they were like, yeah, you know, you're not really what we're looking for. So I started talking to individual private investors and I talked to, gosh, probably over 100 people throughout the year. It was like, there were days where I would be meeting with people, like 3 or 4 people a day. And I was getting all these no's. I finally got a couple of yeses, some maybes. And so I kind of had pulled this pool of people together. And it was frustrating and it was scary. Like there were times where I was like, oh, I'm going to run out of my initial investment that I seeded this business with before I find investment. And I'm just going to be out that money and I'm not going to be able to build this great thing that I want to build. And then I found another investor who was only interested in doing the deal himself. So I had this group of people and I had a single investor, and everybody told me, don't go with the single investor. Don't do it. If you guys don't agree on something, like it's like basically marrying somebody you just meet on the street. Like, don't do it. And I don't know, against everyone's better judgment, I just felt like there was something there that he understood, the conversations that we were having. I just felt like he understood what I was trying to do. And once he was really on board with the cannabis furniture, I was like, yeah, I think I'm gonna go I was calling him the lone wolf at the time, the lone wolf investor. And when I was signing the paperwork in December of 2019, so it took me almost a full 12 months to get investment. And I was signing the contracts and the paperwork. I was thinking in the back of my mind, I'm like, this is going to be a year from now. You're either going to be celebrating that you've made a great decision, or you're going to be hating life and wishing that at this very moment you weren't doing what you're doing right now, which is signing. And, a year later, I'm still, thrilled. I love the team that I work with. Um, we meet regularly and, I thought I would be against that, but it's actually been really helpful to have, a sounding board. I'm a solo founder and, not having a co-founder it's lonely sometimes. And it's hard because it's really just yourself, kicking ideas around in your head. I can't really talk to my husband about it. It's not really fair because I'm kind of, I'm telling him a bunch of things that he can't actually help with. So it just added stress. So it's great to be able to have, an investor that's engaged and excited about what we're doing.
Oh, that's super. What's a great story. How did you meet some of those? You didn't have all those investors in your network, even the ones who were giving you no. Just if you give me a couple minutes on how did
Sure.
you get from one to the next one to the next one?
Sure. So a lot of them, I pulled together, one of the strategies that Julie had shared with me is build a spreadsheet of all the people that you want to pitch to and manage it that way. And so there was a Google Doc that we were sharing. She thankfully opened up a lot of her connections and a lot of her investors, not all of them, but ones that she felt had, an alignment, and made some connections and introductions for me. So I met a lot of those people. Um, I, just really talked about my business to everyone and was just like, if you know of anybody, there were people that I hadn't spoken with in a while who, frankly, I think were a little weirded out by the fact that I reached out to them. But at that time, I was just kind of like, look, you never know where it's going to come from. And if they say no, maybe it's going to be somebody that they know that they talk about. So it's just being humble and, trying to put your ego aside, because you do hear a lot of no's. And the one thing that I tell a lot of people who are out looking for investment is, your no's don't mean that your idea stinks or that it's not good, usually. It just means that you haven't found the right person yet. Um, and that's also hard advice to take, because you also hear from a lot of people that investors don't invest in the idea, they invest in the person. And so for me, I was like, well, what does that say about me then? If nobody's like investing in my company, do they not believe in me? But, pitching, there is an art to it. Um, and, it takes a little while to find to hit your stride. Um, the investor that I finally ended up going with, and I'm working with today, I actually met through a connection that I have through my membership in Professional Dimensions, which is a women's networking group, a professional networking group in Milwaukee. And I was on a committee with one woman, and she was asking me how my investment was going. And there were actually a lot of women within Professional Dimensions who connected me with people that they knew that were investors. I met with some women who were professional fundraisers who were like, if I know of anybody in our network that give to our organization, I'll put you in touch with those people. So people were really generous with making connections for me and opening doors for me. The woman in Professional Dimensions who ultimately connected me with my investor, she was like, there's somebody that I know. He's notoriously like private. You won't find him on the internet. But if he's interested, I'll share with him, send me your deck. If he's interested, I'll connect you to. And he was interested. So I met him. But you never know where your connections are going to come from. It's just a lot of like telling everyone, telling people, if you know of anybody who might be, a connection or who might be interested in this idea, please let me know. And most people are willing to pass along those connections. It was all word of mouth.
I think that's so true of so many people. A couple of things you said that really stand out to me. One, it wasn't necessarily the person you were talking to, it might be the person they know. And also just being willing to be an evangelist for your own product. Just talk about it to everyone, because it becomes a big part of what you're doing. And it's okay to share that part of your life with other people, because you just don't know whether it's giving good business advice, investors, suggestions. Have you thought about this? It could be a statement off the cuff. And the last piece that really stood out to me was, I've heard this from quite a few entrepreneurs, and it takes asking about 50 people to get there, but there tends to be one or two people who open up the biggest avenue of opportunity, but you don't know who in the 50 is going to be that one person. Exactly. And so you have to ask the 50 to find that one, but know that almost for everyone, that person is out there somewhere. You don't know who they are or how they come together, but it happens. Let's pivot a little bit. I want you just to talk about your brand, sell us on what you're making. It's commercial time now, Sharon.
Well, before we do that, I do want to just say one other thing. When you're looking for funding, there's so many different ways that you can fund your business. You can crowdfund, you can community crowdfund, you can friends and family, you can find an investor like I did that you don't know. There's bank debt, there's convertible note. There's just so many different ways that you can fund your business. You don't always have to sell equity. And I had an idea of what I was looking for. and equity wasn't really it at first. Um, so I would say talk to a lot of different people. Like I was talking to some community banks as well, and some, more traditional banks. But ultimately, I think you have to be open to, sort of where the path takes you. And, for something that I was really kind of dead set against, being open-minded about it, allowed me to get to a place with an investor that I feel really good about. And if I had really held tight to that, idea of, I'm going to look for debt, or crowdfunding or finding female investors, I wouldn't have gotten to where I am right now. So I think it's, set out with chart a course in a direction, but be willing to course correct if something, if some information presents itself that, makes veering off and going a different direction a better choice for you and for your company. So.
No, I think that's right on. And I think we can't, a lot of times, particularly starting out, but honestly, on the whole journey, we can have great ideas. We can be very passionate of it, but at another level, we have to kind of hold loosely to it and be ready for the pivot that shows up.
Yeah,
Because that may be, and I've talked to a handful of folks where they're like, but this is my path that I'm going. And I'm like, but these are the doors that are open. So beat your head on a wall or turn, one of the two. So tell us a little bit about your brand, what you're selling and where you're at today.
Sure. So Forti Goods is our brand. We make sustainably and US made furniture that's, built to last lifetimes. And we have what makes us different than other US made furniture is our locking capabilities. So each of our pieces of furniture have at least one locking drawer. And in it is a little control box, the brain, that controls our locks. And so it's app enabled. You download an app to your phone and you put your piece of furniture up on your home Wi-Fi and you can access it from anywhere. You can give other people, you can grant other people access. It has a history of, in and out. And we decided to go with an electronic lock and an electronic solution and an app-based system because we wanted people to have, history. We wanted it to be easy to use so that, as you're getting older, you may have less mobility in your hands, or you may have an illness that takes some mobility out of your hands. And so having a key that could get lost or get taken by somebody else just didn't really feel secure enough. And so, we kind of tracked down that situation and we found somebody to build us an app and build us a box within Wisconsin. And, spent a lot of time doing, some human factor studies on how the app was going to work. Was it going to be usable for people who are older and maybe not as phone savvy? And, it's been a lot of fun to hear the feedback from, basically different writers that I'm speaking to, reporters, customers, just feedback on the internet. It's been, the main thing that I hear from people is, why didn't I think of this? Like, it's so simple and yet nobody's done it before. We've had a couple of haters where where people have been like, why would you need a whole piece of furniture for cannabis? And, my response to that is, who's calling Crate and Barrel or West Elm and saying, why do you have furniture to store alcohol? Like, why do you need a whole piece of furniture for alcohol? It's just, it's something that's been normalized. And, locking furniture to store something that has psychoactive effects and could harm kids, it just hasn't been done yet. So we're doing it.
That's awesome. If people want to get a hold of you and they want to see more about your products, how do they reach you?
Well, our website is www.fortigoods.com, and that's FORTIGOODS. And then our social media, our handle most places is @FortiGoods. And then if you want to email us, it's hi@fortigoods.com.
Awesome. Sharon, thank you so much for coming. We're Sharon Kevil, the founder of Forti Goods. Once again, we've got her website down there. I'm Brent Halfwasson. I'm an entrepreneur coach. Happy to have you here on Entrepreneur Encounters. If you want to reach out to me, you can get me at brent@halfwasson.com. If you want to stay up to date on what we're doing on Entrepreneur Encounters, in addition to this show, we're also doing on Wednesday afternoons at 4:30 Central. It's just an opportunity it's a Zoom call where entrepreneurs can get together and they can share their challenges and whatever's coming up next for them, and amazing connections are being made. If you learned anything from Sharon's story, and I've like in my mind, I've taken about 20 notes and I'm going to turn it into a case study. It's amazing, but you have to work your network. And in order to work your network, you have to talk to people. So do join us. We have a couple of sponsors here that I definitely want to highlight. Andrew Feller Photography has done a lot of photography for us, so give him a big shout out. Milwaukee Web Designs as well. So on behalf of everyone watching, thank you so much. Again, I'm Brent Halfwasson with Halfwasson Associates. I do look forward to hearing from you. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.